having people think enough of me to say, "Hey, I want you to make art for me, and I'm gonna pay you for it." That's pretty cool. That's really cool.
Welcome to the Details Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Williams, Dan E. Williams, and today I have yet another incredible guest from the world of car culture, automotive, art, Alex Wakefield. Alex, how are you doing today, sir?
Excellent. How are you?
Man, on top of the world, in pole position, if you will.
Well, it's a good place to be.
Yeah. Bright and cheery, like a beautiful oil painting of a race car. That's how I am. I had to mold that exactly for you.
I appreciate that.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I came across you from social media, and I saw some of the artwork of yours that had been shared by Ralph Hansen Jr., who is a common connection, and you guys are both from over in the Chicagoland area. He lives in more towards Chicago, and you are in Joliet, the famous Blues Brothers and prison.
Yep.
Place. Is that what most people think about when they hear Joliet, or is that just all people like us?
No, that's probably pretty fair. I mean, Joliet is just kind of a river town, so it's a little rough around the edges, but it's all right.
All right. So I just want to crack right into your career because it is a really neat journey that you have that started out all the way back when you were a child with some crayons. And let's take me back all the way to your very first memories of making any kind of art. As like I say, I read that you were handy with some crayons, and it just kind of all snowballed from there.
Yeah, it's kind of a running gag, but yeah, I just kept drawing all the time, and I was continuously getting encouraged. And at this point, I get that question. I just said I never put down the crayons, and it's kind of an icebreaker, a conversation starter for one thing. But it's just I was always enjoying creating things that I was seeing, and a big thing that I enjoyed doing when I was in elementary school is also making flags. So just these geometric designs and how colors went together, and how, looking back, ultimately different countries would have different representations for what they wanted to visually portray for their country. So it just became this thing. And we were talking a little bit before the broadcast with doing model cars. I would kind of use get these monogram model cars, and I would trace the outline of like a Monte Carlo or a Thunderbird or whatever, and then I just fill in what it's kind of a template for me to get at least some sort of proportion right of the side of the car to make it look like Tim Richmond or Bill Elliott or whoever. And then I just started looking at other things and trying to get dimensionality into what I was doing. But it wasn't always cars. Sometimes it was dinosaurs. Sometimes it was coming up with my own design for a bicycle or something like that. So I was always kind of dabbling. But the main inspiration was usually some sort of motorsports, because my dad was involved a little bit with some friends at a local dirt track. They would race super modified at 34 Raceway, which was about a half mile from me as a crow flies, and it's still there. Holds Saturday night races, and they get USAC and sometimes high limit races and World Outlaws too. They're pretty big on late models for time. So like have a Tampa series and stuff like that. So but yeah, that was always around. Then ESPN was showing everything,
Now
short
put
of
a pin in that racetrack because we're going to go back to that early racetrack
okay,
as we both
sure,
kind of
sure,
grew up in that environment. But
sure.
so yeah, I also read that you grew up in Iowa in a town of like 350 people.
Yep.
So were you drawing also like tractors? Was that a big deal for you because that was something that was kind of around you?
Little bit. Yeah, I guess farm equipment, just anything that was super huge and just like loud colors. Um, Remember this German four wheel four wheel drive tractor that had like a central pivot. I think it was called Steiger Cougar. It was this really odd minty green that at 7 or 8 years old was just fascinating to me because it was this monstrous tractor. It was so rare because everything was either international or Ford or John Deere, of course. Um, and then to see this odd tractor come around, so that there was a little bit of that with farm equipment. My neighbors were just on the edge of town, so I would go to their place and we'd race bicycles and screw around on farm equipment and stuff. And we weren't driving the tractors, but we'd just like sit on and like turn the steering wheels and stuff like that. So yeah, that I'm definitely from Iowa, that's for sure.
Okay. And then what you said, and we were talking about models, and you said that you would
Sure.
take something and put it over top of it and kind of trace the outline. I remember like in my early days when I would try to draw cars, it would always just be the car at this, right the exact side. Were you
Right.
already starting like at an early time to draw it like from an over top or like a different perspective, or were those very early things only that one very flat, one-dimensional kind of surface?
To start with, I couldn't tell you like from ages what to what that timetable played out. I know it was probably around 5 to 6 years old. That's when my dad got me my first model car. So maybe about seven, because Elliot had just won the Winston Million in '85, and I'd have been six, so 7 or 8, somewhere in there. But yeah, just taking the car body and literally just like holding it, and then just running the marker around the edge of it just to get some general shape. That was about as close as I could get at that point. I don't recall getting into three dimensionality until this is a throwback. Do you vaguely remember Mark Kistler's Secret City on PBS? Okay, so it was a super rad drawing program or show rather that he was kind of dressed up like some astronaut type of guy, but he was making this cityscape and showing you how to draw in 3 dimensions. It was super basic stuff, but for me, and I know a lot of other kids out there, because he's still out doing tours and stuff like that, talking to people. Um, just basics of depth, dimension, changing it from 2D space to 3D space. And he would take these little um, lessons and then he would plug them into his larger uh, city drawing it was like this is the common thread throughout the whole thing. He was still working on this city drawing, and he would take breaks and be like, okay, here's where we're at this point. And then here, I'm going to show you how to do this part of it. So it was really cool. I'm sure you could find like YouTube clips of it and stuff, but just getting into different ways of making art, different perspectives was really fantastic and refreshing. So I started to take that, and then I can do this with a car. Okay, well, how do I make this look a certain way? We even go in the car dealerships, and I'd pick up um, the new model pamphlets that they would have. Like I remember getting one for the '89 5.0 Mustang and drawing stuff out of that, or the Thunderbird, drawing stuff out of that. So just anything, I was insatiable. I was just anything I could pick up.
That's super cool. Were you taking art in school also? Was it a big thing? Were there programs? And I would imagine.
We had art class, yeah. It was like once or twice a week. We had that where I was at. At the time, Iowa had a pretty decent education system. Um, so yeah, if I wasn't doing that in art class, I was actually probably doing more art during class than I was probably The teacher wanted me to, get on your math or your English or whatever. And I didn't want to do that. I want to draw pictures.
So a lot of guys who, they latch on to something at an early part of their career and they just kind of keep following through and following through. And those are the guys who really become successful. I find a lot of them have done sports and such in their upcoming or team kind of events. Did you do that, or was like art is very much off to yourself and kind of in your own world? But did you participate in group activities as well? And if so, did that influence doing art?
We had a local, like just up the highway from us, another very small town, farm town, Danville. Uh, they had like local, they call it Major League, which essentially for the area was like Little League, but didn't have anything to do with the National Little League Association. Did T-ball before that, and there really wasn't anything else to do. And I don't know. I guess I was more, again, like you're asking, were you more of a solo person in what you wanted to do? Yeah, I like driving my bike. I liked racing my bike against the other kids around the neighborhood. So that was kind of a thing for me. We were just on the end of kind of a small BMX craze where we were at. And it kind of died off right when I was just getting into a bicycle, unfortunately, because there was actually a couple decent tracks around the area. So it was more like trying to race and the racing thing with that local dirt track. I don't know. There was just something in the atmosphere, that,
That's exactly where I want to go next.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and I should say this too. There were three other guys and two currently that I know of that have some sort of career in creating stuff for motorsports. They're still doing it. Corey Johnson and Clay Kemp, if you're familiar with either of those two guys. Corey was doing stuff for a lot of NHRA teams, graphic design T-shirts, did shirts for Tony Kanaan and Andretti Green at the time. I think he's still doing it. And he went to the same high school I did. So did Clay. He was working for Arizona Sports Shirts for a while. And now he's just like, everybody knows him for making these immaculate scale models. Like he just goes, I feel good when I get something clean, built well, but he just, check out his Instagram, man. He does tremendous work. It's museum quality work. But it's, again, the fact that I have some sort of a career in motorsports through creative work, and these other 2-3 guys, like, what the heck? It's just so strange.
Yeah, especially from being from such a small area.
Yep.
Well, so thinking back at that track, I spent a lot of my youth at as I still like to refer to them as, the redneck races. Those little local tracks where they have you can go down in the pits and smell all the smells and hear all the sounds and see the guys getting into a fight and all of that. And you did that with your dad. Tell me a little bit about how that has that start in motorsports and going to watch it kind of played into your career.
He was, I think it was all a bunch of friends. So, and they would go work on this super modified throughout the week. And the class was set up where it was, non-wing, leaf spring front. I think it was a 305 and torsion bar rear. And the whole idea was to have an open wheel class that wasn't as expensive as 360 sprint cars. And that was competitive, affordable. And that's how they it was a Saturday night thing. What you weren't supposed to go to World Outlaws eventually. It's kind of like if you can win a race, that it could pay for your tire bill type of thing. Because none of this stuff you don't go racing like that to make money. You do that out of pure passion and want to go be competitive. So I was just around it, and I think it was he would be working in the shop, the local, just up the road, where they worked on the car. And I'd be killing time either drawing pictures or there's a basketball hoop. I tried to get better at basketball and just being around the environment. I was still too little to really be in the shop to do anything because they were usually doing some sort of grinding or some kind of welding. And they were just, no, stay away, stay out of here. We don't want you to get hurt, that type of stuff. And I was an inquisitive child, so that was kind of oil and water, but I still had to be around. Yeah, that lasted for I think 3 seasons. But again, as a kid, 3 years, 3 summers, late spring summers, those are big times of your life because that sets the tone for, you know, at least some very big time seeded memories, if not something grander than that, like we're talking about today.
Yeah, definitely
Eventually got into go-karts because of two.
Definitely your formative years. And that's exactly where I was going to go next. And so when you were around 12, you got the bug to get behind the wheel of the car. Tell me a little bit about that experience.
Trying to find a kart that, like, because we had no clue. Like, we eventually got like an American Power Sports catalog. If you were into kart racing, that was what you got to get parts. Because if you're out in BFE like we were, California had places you could literally go to. We didn't. We had to do everything mail order pretty much. I ended up buying a local guy's, it was a Yamaha kart. And what? And it originally came, it was an early 80s thing, late 70s, early 80s, that came with the KT100 engine. But they were running a Briggs engine. And that's how I kind of got started. And it was a good machine just to get started compared to some of the other stuff we were looking at, because one place had like a couple concession cart frames and thought maybe that could be something. But, we were kind of on the shoestring budget that my dad was doing before with his friends. And that same track at 34 did another small dirt oval inside the bigger 3/8 mile. And started doing that from, let me think, 91 to 93, I think, maybe 94, somewhere in there. So did that, went to another place up not far from there that had held national championships before. It's no longer around, near Columbus Junction. And just tried to get my feet wet and had probably more grandiose dreams about trying to get higher and racing. And it's tough. It's really tough. And I soon started to figure out that within a couple of years, not long after that, it was like I wanted to give it a fair crack, but my talent in artwork was far outweighing in evidence what I was able to do as a driver. So that's kind of how I started to make that motion towards making art instead of driving so much.
Okay. Now we both have, our common thread is going back to the Indy 500 stuff. Can you tell me about the first memory you have of going to the Indy 500?
I didn't go to the 500 proper until 2008. I was one of the people that always watched on primetime ABC. I vaguely remember Tom Steva, like in period. First proper race I remember is the 85 race. And so since everything was on prime time, there's some compressed parts of the race and stuff, and they do these little featurettes and everything as opposed to just like showing the races they do live today. And I ended up getting right about the time that Sullivan spun. I was starting to get a little bit tired because I was 6, and I think it was like 9:30 at night or something like that. And I saw Mario take the lead, and in my head, little did I know, I was so naive. It's like, okay, I think he's got this one. And there's like 80 laps left. It just, sure. But I remember telling my grandma, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to bed. There's this paper plate that was sitting over on, we had a humidifier back then, this huge thing. And I said, can you please write who wins the race on this? I'm going to bed. I got up. I was like hoping to see Mario Andretti on there. It said Danny Sullivan. I just like threw the plate. I was not happy about it. And Yeah. So that's the first one I remember. But I remember sitting through '86 when I think got rain delayed a full week. Um, but just sitting there through the initial Sunday rain delay and just like waiting and waiting and waiting and but it just the more things came along. That was the original scene. Indy 500, Daytona 500 in February. Dad and me would watch both of those, and that was always a big deal. And then we got cable, and you're able to consume more of the races and stuff, and just all these little things we've been talking about here, just kind of built on that passion and different flavors of motorsports. Really, just kept me coming back.
Excellent, excellent. So at what point was it that you realized that you could kind of marry, your love of drawing and art and the world of motorsports? Like what was the aha moment that kind of put those two pieces together for you?
I think kind of seeing what was possible just from other artists being featured on TV. The first guy I recall actually remember seeing on TV doing that was Sam Bass from NASCAR, because the Inside Winston Cup when it was Ned Jarrett. Yeah, he's the guy who hosted that. They had a small feature on him, and I thought, well, that's cool. These guys making Earnhardt and Petty and just the who's who of NASCAR, Bobby Allison, paintings. Like I didn't know what that was or how that worked or prints or any of that stuff, but at least kind of showed somebody's doing it, and it seemed quasi interesting. But I think at that point that I had seen it, I was still infatuated with, well, I was being a kid, but I was still probably more interested in trying to drive and make some sort of a career, or in my head, some sort of a career trying to drive cars. Again, you're 11, you don't know what you want. You just kind of are following passions and following the breadcrumbs of life and going wherever. The other thing I would say that made me take note was, you vaguely remember the old Speed Gear catalogs?
I do not.
It was kind of like IndyCar and mostly Formula One and IndyCar type of memorabilia. So you could get Benetton, actually crew shirts out of there, because they would just sell their old shirts that they ran the previous season. You could buy it on that catalog, so before online shopping. But they also had these prints that people would make. So like Andrew Kitson was a guy I remember seeing. I think his name is Keith Murray. He used to do a lot of stuff for Newman Haas, early 90s. Randy Owens was a big guy. I think Randy Owens was kind of the next person I really recall seeing, all right, he's making art, he's making prints. Dad would talk to me about this. Hey, you should look more into this type of stuff. And, I was still sharpening my skills to even get close to being, wanted as an artist to sell things. I was just going surely off of pure passion, and drawing whatever I could do and whatever was interesting to me at that point. So my technique was a long time in coming as far as being any sort of professional grade, but I was still having fun, and that was the main thing. But yeah, Speed Gear was kind of the other one that came to mind, that I saw, again, a marker on the journey to say, hey, this is possible.
Okay. So as I was doing my research on you, I came across the story. And, yeah, this one's cool though. So one of the things, I do business coaching too, and one of the biggest things that people do not do throughout pretty much all realms of life, all strings here, is they don't have really good follow through. And your story of the museum in Portugal, where you were the only person who continued to follow through and follow up, reminded me of Ralph Hansen Jr. when he invited Tony Hulman over to the Theta Chi fraternity house for a dinner, and he came through and he followed through and presented him with a silver platter that was like a
Mm.
memorial of it. And so tell me this story, because that was a huge piece that you did. And had you not followed through like the other people, it probably wouldn't even have happened for you.
No, it was bizarre. It was kind of bizarrely cool, like you're kind of alluding to there. Because I didn't know have any connection with Portugal, like ambivalent towards it. Besides the learning what you learned about their seafaring in the 1500s and the fact that Estoril held the Portuguese Grand Prix. Didn't know anything really about the country. And get this contact from the Museo do Caramul, uh, and Salvador contacted me and said, "Hey, we're looking at trying to do this crude show." I'm like, "All right." Well, on his end, it was kind of a follow up too, because I'm like, "All right, well, what are you looking for? What do you need?" Just this kind of email tennis, and everything that they said that they were going to do, they did. And I'm like, all right, proof's in the pudding there. And honestly, it was just like you said, I was the one that was continuously contacting them back. He had wanted this particular painting. It was like that apparently sold him to or sold me to him. It was called Respect the Kink, and it was a picture of a painting, 30 by 40 painting of Brian Redman at the 1,000 kilometers of Spa in probably 71 or 72, maybe 72, driving the 312 PB Ferrari, with the open cockpit. And I just thought, well, I ended up doing that painting for his evening with dinner out at in Long Beach for Brian Redman. And it's this really low shot of this Ferrari coming through the Mazda Kink. And like the guardrails right on the inside, and it's a really great painting. And he says, "I want that painting." I'm like, "It's sold, dude. Sorry." It's like, "Well, I want another one." So, okay, here, I won't do the exact same one, but I'll do one from a previous year in the Gulf Porsche that he ran there, and they won with him and Joe Sifford. So that kind of sealed things on his end. Which that painting is over there in Portugal now at their museum. At one point, they had it on display. On the other side of the atrium was a Picasso that they had. Like, that's kind of cool. That's a pretty cool thing to be able to say, is you got your stuff not only the same museum but right next to it.
That is pretty darn cool.
Yeah, yeah. Wonderful people, wonderful experience. I will have nothing but good things to say about Portugal. Really, really great country. I mean, and we went a lot of the way over the country. I went from Lisbon. We stayed there for a day or two. Took the coast road over to Cabo de Roca. Went to Estoril because it's not too far from Lisbon. It's absolutely gorgeous. And then ended up taking a train up to Caramulo, which is this mountaintop village where this museum's at. And apparently they used to use, or that town was formed as a retreat for tuberculosis patients back in the 20s and 30s or something, somewhere early century. And it was just real healing waters that they found that they have there. So it's a very pretty place, wonderful people. Like I said, that was probably the biggest impression I noticed, was just everybody's so friendly and courteous and warm. And I'd definitely like to go back.
I want to go to be quite honest.
If you're a surfer, get it. Legit surf.
Nice.
It's like
Nice.
too big for me, but they've got some nice surfing there too.
All right. So you've worked with legends like Mario Andretti, Willie T. Ribbs, Brian Redman, these names that you're mentioning, and you've done commissioned art for them. Like, what does it feel like when somebody of that caliber commissions you to do a piece of art with them? Like,
Um, it's exciting. It's really exciting. It's the oh my god type of feeling. Maybe it's a little bit less now because the um professional side of me kicks in. Like, all right, well, what do we want to do? What's the timetable? What am I going to make this look like? You know, but I can't and don't let that go too far in the way of the inspiration for the feeling of, because you got to have the logical side that takes care of the business and everything. And like I said, making sure that everything's done in a timely fashion. But I'm into this because I'm passionate about it, and I'm good at it too. But um, the passion fuels everything, and it's it's a big deal. And I don't on the day to day think about it too much, but when I get in these small chats and that type of thing, it's a great reminder of what I'm need to be and am grateful for. Getting to make stuff for fans, let alone legends of the sport. It's a big deal.
Yep, it is indeed. As is making the cover for the Indy 500 program. That's, I
Yeah.
mean, if we could say the greatest spectacle in racing, and you make the cover for the entire program. How did that opportunity come about? And tell me a little bit about that.
That was so I was doing graphic design for a time, and I got hired as a part-time graphic designer at the track. Worked there for about a year in 2011. So I was there for Weldon winning. I was there for MotoGP. It was a wonderful time. Um, and I stayed in touch with a couple of people that were there, and the head or the creative director now, Mandy. I just would send her stuff. She's like, "Hey, check it out." Honestly, keeping keeping my stuff visually there and percolating if something comes up, but I knew there was no guarantee of anything. So just keeping stuff out there. And it's like, hey, this is really great stuff. We might want you to do something of Balancer. I think I don't remember exactly what it was. Excuse me. And then it got to be, well, it's not going to be Balancer. And this would have been early fall of 2019. I think I got asked to make a sketch for a cover concept, maybe around early November. It's like, yeah, we want to see if you can take a crack at the cover here. Okay, cool. And then Penske buys a track. And then it was like one thing after another. So I made up 2 pages of my initial concept. I had right here. So it started off with this. And it was just going to be the Holman George era. And then I think it was me and another artist that I was in contention with. And the word was that Doug Bowles looked at it, is like, well, I can only see one winner at this. And he pointed my illustration. So I thought that was really amazing. And then they confirmed that, and they said they want to do one more thing. They wanted to add just one more panel for the full history of the track. So when you pick up the cover or the program, it'd have been like this, then this on the inside, and then this is the back cover. And it was a very silky smooth process. The fact that the race got delayed by COVID actually saved my butt. It was a little bit marginal as far as me making the original May dateline for printing, but so August helped out a lot for me personally. But it was still a strange time in the fact that it was a COVID race, and I'm glad they did print up some programs, which they didn't have to do because nobody was in attendance, but it was a thing that I'm forever appreciative of. I'd like to do it again for a fully attended race. But yeah, that's kind of the general lead up to how everything went. But it was hard to kind of know who to put in, who to leave out. And I think the initial criteria was you had to at least win the race twice or have some significant contribution to the race, whether it was mechanically or as just a person. So that's why you see Janet Guthrie on there. You see Willie T. Ribbs on there. We've got, let's see, I have Ari's 1990 winner on there because at the time, up to 2019, he had the fastest overall race speed. Let me think. Weldon was on there. Mario won it once, but the dude could have won it 6 times easily. You know, I think.
We got Holman on there.
Yeah, he was kind of the fulcrum for me because, like, all right, Wilbur Shaw doesn't get him to buy the track. We're not sitting here talking about it, you know, because it was a military dump at one point, I think, and it was pretty rough shape. So the fact that Wilbur Shaw, he's in there too, 3-time winner. Tom Carnegie, that's what I was trying to think of. The only guy I think I might have personally feel like I missed was Sid Collins. Because I found out more after the fact from Dinner with Racers podcast. Paul Page was talking about that. Paul Page would have been another good one too. Bob Jenkins would have been another good one.
Jim
but I was trying to.
The story, it just goes on and on.
But there's exactly. It's like you could find somebody that get butthurt, be like, "Well, why didn't you have this guy?" It's like, all right, this is 14 by 28. All right, and that's 100+ years of history. Somebody's gonna get left off. Sorry, man. And it's probably going to be somebody significant. I had the 3 owners, or sorry, not the 3 owners, but I had the 4 founders, then Rickenbacker, then Hallman, and then I put Penske in there. But originally I was having him as that's how I see Roger on the box making calls. That's how I see Roger Penske being badass. It's like just seeing everything and the whole chess pieces for his team moving. That's how I showed him. And they said he apparently was confused why he was on there. I'm going, what? Come on, don't do the false modesty. That's BS. Knock it off.
He would be a fantasy interview for me to talk about business. Like that's a winner in so many different realms, you know?
And that I would be interested too. I don't know how much he would open up about it though, because he's for as articulate and polished as he is, sometimes he can be reserved. So like holding something back, I'm like, even at this age, he would still hold the secrets back, you know. But I think it would also be a very good interview too.
So when I had this is Mark Dill's book that I had read and I interviewed Mark Dill about, and what I think is really neat about it is this is your art on here. And so like that's the neat thing about doing art, you know. You are influencing people and people are seeing your stuff and not necessarily knowing it's you. I would imagine, you know, unlike a musician or maybe somebody who does where they're more public with what they're doing. Does it feel frustrating not to get the recognition sometimes and just have so much of your work out there that's going into people's eyes and brains?
I don't know. I mean, not necessarily. It's like a lot of it I'd say is, am I keeping the lights on? That's one thing. But there's so many good illustrators and painters and creatives even within motorsports that the only time I would maybe not feel good about that is if I did the work and somebody plagiarized it blatantly or stole it and said, "Hey, I did this thing." Like, well, no, you didn't. And I've had that happen once, and it was so obvious that I had to call them out on it. Um, but no, I mean, like somebody gets a different job that somebody preferred, like said client preferred their artwork. I've been the other side of it too, where I did get the choice for the 500 cover. I'm really grateful for that, but it's taste and who wants what. And, um, I'm grateful for what I have. I'm grateful for what's always coming, but getting into some sort of like strange competition like that, it doesn't really affect me too much. One of the great things I appreciate is when I'm at Indy. I usually go there for each weekend during May. Is people that actually come up to me and talk to me about my work and ask questions and have a nice experience chatting with me. Um, I think that's some of my favorite times of being an artist is really seeing firsthand. They're looking at me, watching me make a picture, and then they get to talk to me about it. I'd say 11 months out of the year, I don't have that experience so much because my family sees it and they do like it and I appreciate that. But people that may not have seen me or people that have seen me the last couple of years that come to see me and say, "Hey, again, that's really rewarding." So yeah, as far as like a jealousy or anything like that for a job that I didn't get, I used to get indignant about that, but it's not such a thing for me anymore because I've got a little bit more perspective on things, thankfully now. And like I said, I'm grateful for what I have.
Yeah, actually, your first part of the answer was you nailed what I was going for. Just like that 11 months that nobody knows that it's you, and you're in front of their face all the time. So getting that recognition is really cool. Okay, so these pieces are incredibly detailed. Like I'd venture to say more detailed than a photograph. Like if we really look, you can see like each spoke and there's motion in them. And how long does it take to do a piece? One of these pieces of art, and also with that same question, is there a really big difference if you're doing it with a pencil or with oil paint or charcoal? Any of the different mediums.
I'd say the medium that I use currently that's the fastest from like start to finish, it's probably the Posca marker renderings that I've been doing. I did a recent one of AJ Foyt's 64 500 winner, just a little 8x10. And I may be doing a series of those. I think there's some links for that. Just significant Indy cars and just the nose of the car. People kind of going, "Oh, I know that one." But I think that took me an afternoon. Just getting that general shape, knocking in really bright colors, and having a bit of motion to it, and it's a fun, effective way to portray a driver or a car or whatever, and it's fun and easy. The ones that probably take me the most amount of time, I haven't done an oil painting in a few years, to be fair, because that's almost like chemistry in a way. But the mixed media currently is my most complex and most time consuming because there's so many details and you don't get a lot of coverage with a small pencil. That's why I try to keep those illustrations and usually no bigger than like a 19 by 24. I'm currently working on a 24 by 36 of Ray Haroon and Dan Weldon. It's very, very big. I've been on this for almost a year. But I've like hand illustrated all the bricks in on one portion of the drawing. Did the flower wreath around Dan Weldon and made part of that is into a border. So yeah, I'd say that's the most time consuming right there is the mixed media illustrations because you lay down the graphite, then you airbrush it over the top of that, and then you use colored pencils, and then that's where you get that depth that you're talking about in the book cover that you're pointing out with the Barney Oldfield.
Okay. So with all of these things, do you just kind of you have the idea at first, like you kind of showed the Indy 500 cover when you
Mm.
started working on it. Do you just have how do you come up with the vision to start, and then once you start and like you put your first piece down on it, does that kind of make it move and meander around and make it flexible, or do you just kind of get this idea in your head and you're like, this guy's going here, this car's going here?
Um, the sketch that I showed you for the 500 cover, that's that's pretty much the comp, um, or like a fleshed out comp. What I start with, I don't think I've got that one handy, but they're smaller sketches. So it just in a normal sketchbook, I'll have, you know, thumbnails about that big to lay general elements of the picture out. So like driver, driver and helmet, car. Okay. And then that, especially when I'm talking with the client about a commission, is I'll mock up three different ideas, like one that's close to what they were asking for, one that's a little bit different, and one that's just way out left field, and kind of work things from there. And that usually is enough for a client to understand how things are generally going to be laid out, and then I update the client on timely fashion as far as here's the update, here's where we're at, how are things looking for you, that type of thing. 9 times out of 10, I've thankfully not had any issues just because I've communicated clearly, had good sketches so they can understand where my creative intent is, and had a lot of happy customers, which I'm grateful for too.
No. So as I look at these pictures, like they seem like they're full of like emotion and and motion itself. How do you bring that emotion? Like if I'm looking at this, and I did read this book, like the look on his face is very matching of his demeanor. And how do you on a two-dimensional or one-dimensional, whatever the how do you put the emotion that you put in these people's face and the motion into the vehicles?
So to be fair, with a lot of my illustrations, I do use photo references, but photos make everything really flat. So what I need to do is either make portions of the face more soft or rigid. It just depends on the portion of the face that I'm working at. And it also depends on the stage of the illustration I'm working at. So if I'm airbrushing, sometimes I might use the edge of a index card just to get a hard line if I've got some light on, like looking at Rick mirrors right now, where the light or the shadow might hit, and then there's a separation, so I need to make that more hard edge. So it really just depends on what tool I'm using and what needs to be done in the drawing process or painting process to get the effect that I'm trying to achieve. Um, Light and shadow, color, temperature, all that stuff, and most of it just comes from observation of, yes, the photo, but also life in general and just how people look, and honestly trying to imagine, like, hey, I'm drawing around their head, or I'm drawing around this curvature of the nose of the car, and really, not to sound pretentious or anything like that, but just kind of channeling, what does that feel like, what does that look like, and then trying to hopefully get that to come through the pen or the pencil or the airbrush. And usually I know by just looking at it and getting the feeling like, okay, got it, that's it, that's the one. And it's nice to get that validation from other people that see what I felt and saw in the studio at that point. That's usually some way of how the puzzle pieces kind of come together in that way, is having that type of realization once you put the work in.
All right. So as an independent artist, how has social media played a role in promoting you and getting you out there? And what kind of channels seem to work
Tremendous.
the best?
Tremendous. I work with galleries rarely. It's probably due to my subject matter because fine art galleries typically don't go for motorsports work unless you're in Indianapolis or there's a special event or something like that that's taking place. Um, but what that's also enabled me to do is get to people that are interested in this type of work more effectively than spending a whole ton of money on ads in magazines or something like that. You know, really have that organic traction to um, just like posting in a Facebook group. It's like, hey, here's a thing, IndyCar group, check it out. You know, and knowing the rules of what the platform is and abiding by those rules, but like no promotions. Like, okay, I'll just post a picture. Cool. You know, make the group look pretty for a minute, and that's it. And if somebody wants to talk to me about a print or an original or whatever, I'm like, okay, come off to the side and then direct message, and we can talk about it. But no, it's very cost effective, and I'm still understanding how to work it correctly because what I still use and implement, it's kind of the same thing that I've been doing for the last several years, which has been effective. But those are shifting sands, especially with Instagram. I was getting more traction, but now it's just almost like a gallery that I'm posting things in. And I'm trying to shift with what works in that platform the best. And there's even that Blue Sky app that's out now. So I just started posting artwork to that, just as another space to show things. So by and large, though, it's helped out a lot. Not having to contact the galleries and so forth.
So mostly it's just posting, pictures and copies of the art stuff. Have you ventured in at all to? I'm a huge proponent for doing short videos and reels, but I think that could be super relevant for you also.
What I've done mostly with that has been not stop motion, but time lapse. That's what it is. Just having my phone set up, taking time lapses of me illustrating or airbrushing when I need to do that, and setting it to music. One of the fun things I do enjoy about that is posting a reel and then trying to get the same, say it's like something from maybe 1990 I've been working on of Prost versus Senna, and having music along with that from that time, like 88, 89, 90, and just kind of sonically setting the flavor to the visuals too. And that's kind of fun. Is it really effective necessarily? I don't know, but it's fun for me to just kind of have that, like, all right, this is 1990, check it out, enjoy. So that I do enjoy, but yeah, understanding the platform better has not been my strong suit. So I'm still learning a lot with that.
How about all of this AI stuff? I would imagine for an artist, it would be super frustrating. I know as doing it in business, it is the coolest thing. It's like having a virtual assistant for me to be able to formulate drafts and letters and that kind of stuff and come off as really professional. But for an artist, how does this look to you? And there's, obviously there's nothing we can do because the technology is here and it's going to continue to grow.
Having a symbiotic relationship as far as like getting help and answers and ideas and insights for how to, I guess, implement my business. I've used it a little bit recently within the last month, actually. Initially touch base, and you said you were kind of into that too. So I kind of did a little bit of research with a couple different platforms. I used Hemingway to kind of help simplify and polish some of the descriptions and postings I've got. Dabbling with that to get a different perspective. Yes, it does sound like my words, but at the same time, it's like, all right, simplify it so it's not a 12th grade reading level. Maybe it's a 6th grade, so it can hit a broader range. Cool, that's beneficial. Claude is another one that I've been using just to ask questions for. So that's provided a couple interesting rabbit holes of thought to help when I'm doing business. It's still I'm not leveraging it terribly well, but that portion of things I find benefit. As far as the AI art, okay, I at this point it doesn't have anything to do with me and fighting against something. I don't know. I've got a friend that uses it to create, and he gets tremendous benefit from it personally. So I don't know. Um, it's pissing in the wind comes to mind.
I guess
Why?
you could frame it as there's hundreds of thousands of other people who are artists in the world too, you know? So there's
Yeah,
just other content is other content.
yeah. Are you going to fight against something that you have any control over, or are you just going to go out and kick ass and make good art?
Yeah.
I would spend time in the latter. I don't know, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Very stoic. I like it. I like it. I like it.
Well, it's just I've been down these indignant rabbit holes and thought, all right, is that line of questioning and thought made my life any better? No, kind of wasted my time. So, I guess I had to walk that trail to figure it out, come back and keep going this way. But um, I don't know, to each their own, I guess.
All right. So if you look back across, all the years of your life, is there one piece of standout advice that you've gotten, whether it's in art or even in life itself, that has just been something that has really been a game changer for your life?
Game changer for my life. Hmm. Well, I think just on what we were talking about there is trying not to sweat the small stuff and trying to keep the perspective of circumstances don't matter. It's your state of being that matters. We're all going to go in. We're all going to go into challenges and difficulty. Um, and if you got to feel it and let that go through you, do it. Don't keep that bottled up inside you. But just try to keep walking and keep moving and stay passionate. And I find myself even doing that occasionally too. It's like, am I still enjoying this? Is this still what I want to do? And it is. Having people think enough of me to say, "Hey, I want you to make art for me, and I'm gonna pay you for it." That's pretty cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say that's one of the big things is trying to keep as positive of a momentum as you can and moving forward to what you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Because nobody died. 9 times out of 10, nobody died. It's probably not that big of a deal. And I think having the question that you just posed and hearing myself talk about it is something I needed. So I appreciate you giving me that opportunity as well.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, what's up next for you? Are there any big projects or upcoming things that you're working on right now?
Right now, working on finishing up some client commissions. I've actually got doing a model car for a client, and I'm excited for that. Finishing that up, doing a couple illustrations and working on a kids book. So that's exciting. There's a site already up, I believe, and I don't think I can share that yet. I don't think I've been given the green light, but I can at least say that it is based in 1930s France around a Bugatti and a mechanic, his daughter, and a count. So it's I think it's gonna be fantastic. It's
I wonder who
have you
could be
seen?
writing that.
It's not Mark. It's not
Oh,
Mark.
okay, okay.
But it's been a fun project. The author I've been working with for about a year now, and fleshing our own different things out. He's fleshing out the story. He's pretty well got that, and so it's kind of down to me now to get the visuals together with the storyline. But it's going to be fun. I'm enjoying it so far. Got the cover sorted out, and hoping we can have that launched by next fall. if possible. But yeah, so far so good as far as the response on the cover, and excited to see how it all comes together.
Awesome, awesome. So if we look at like how your art has evolved from a box of crayons at the very beginning to get to where you
Yeah.
are now and all the different mediums you've worked with, where do you see your work going in the next 5 or 10 years? Are there more mediums out there that you haven't touched? Can more mediums get made that aren't even around currently, or where are you
That's a
going?
that's a weird one weird interesting because I got to thinking about that when BMW does the art car and looking at the history of what they've done with the art car. Um, like Alexander Calder and then Lichtenstein and then Warhol, and how they just have their own little tweaks, essentially just painting a car. And then as you go along, like the last couple of them were very getting into tech and some strange things that way. So just kind of put that mirror to myself at going, all right, do I start exploring these other avenues? Where does my interest lie? Um, I don't know. I thought it could be. I've seen people paint with light, do those time lapse images where they're painting with a pen with light and that type of thing. I haven't really thought too deeply on it. Honestly, it's a great question, but I'm open to new things when it comes to anything creatively, especially when I can combine it with something I'm passionate about. Um, yeah, great question. I'm not sure because I'm so like mentally in the weeds with what I'm trying to crank out. Um, so yeah, I'll have to stay open with that one.
Okay. So if being an artist yourself, like are there certain things that keep you inspired or things that you follow and that you watch of other people?
A lot of it comes with racers, but then even one of my early inspirations, Troy Lee, who does a ton of stuff for different car manufacturers, a ton of different racers, a lot of motocross stuff. If you don't know the guy, you've probably seen some of his helmets. Um, Dario Franchitti, Jeremy McGrath, Robbie Gordon, you name it, he's probably painted their helmet. He's still inspired and still doing something with what he started with. Uh, so taking like little seeds of if they're still doing it and they're still finding um, inspiration from what they started off doing, that's like there's hope for me too. It's just like, okay, how does that appear for me? So things like that. And a lot of it is just anything that people are doing that's good in the world. Um, and it may not necessarily have to do with art, but it just could be, you see different reels and different inspirational quotes. I guess that sounds a little corny, maybe, but uh, um, if it's helping somebody out or if it's trying to be decent to other people, I'm all for it. So that's kind of one of the other things that I always look for. I don't watch the news. I try to stay away from that stuff too, because that's easy to get in your own type of rabbit holes where it's easy to have dark thoughts and not be able to get out of them too easily. So it's like, oh, the world's going to bad places. Like, I don't think it is. I think there's a lot of good things on there around the world happening. It's just we got to look for those things and then be that want to see out there too.
Now, I try to stick to the Stoic philosophy with that too. If I can't do anything to change a situation at all, there's no use pouring too much of my emotion and energy into it. Because
It's hard. Yeah. It's hard sometimes. But I also think like we're meant to be where we're meant to be. And if I was meant to be in a war zone, I'd be there. So I don't know, maybe I had a ton of past lives in war zones and wanted to have more of a peaceful life this time. I think we got into all this stuff from our own perspectives, so whether you're a mechanic, a fabricator, a driver, engineer, artist, because we're passionate about the sport and kind of being around people with that similar passion. So, something I've been kind of quasi guilty of occasionally is gatekeeping, and I'd say that isn't good. if you, I think we kind of saw a little bit of that with the Drive to Survive fans coming into Formula One, is a for instance. Um, I think that if we can be as, as inclusive as possible to anybody who's looking to be a fan or involved in racing in some fashion or form, be as welcoming and as accommodating as possible. But if you see something where it's like, all right, you're new to this, you may need a little bit of a brush up on this portion of history because it does deserve respect, that I figure that's cool. But yeah, be as welcoming as possible because it's a good time. I think for all the challenges that motorsports has, it's still great people to be with. And anytime I'm at a track, lately it's just been Indianapolis, but anytime I'm at a track, I'm always having a good time with the people that I meet. It doesn't matter if they're 10 years old with their dad and mom for the first time, or if it's somebody that was there for Lee Wallard back in the early 50s, or watching Johnny Parsons or Jimmy Clark or whoever it was, or Mario in the 80s, having that fun time of, maybe having a little bit of bench racing where you're kind of saying who was better or whatnot. But at the end of the day, we're there to have a good time, and just try to keep that in mind is what I would say.
See? Solid. See, finally, if people want to follow you or buy some of your art or even get something commissioned for you to do for them, how are they going to find you?
Sure. You can check out my site, www.motorart27.com. Got contact in there. I'm also on Instagram, also on Facebook. A little bit of Twitter still. I'm also on Blue Sky Social too. And I'm trying to think. I'm at Johnny Spot 27 on Twitter, but everything else is going to be Motor Art. I think _27. That's certainly on Instagram. So I post on there quite a bit. So yeah, that's pretty much how you can find me. The site is the main one. I have a contact field in there too. So if you need to shoot me an email, it comes right to my my inbox, and I'm the only one who answers. So yeah, run lean and mean.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to hang out with me and go through all of these things. It's been really cool, and the way that you can, like I say, I think I'm most impressed with how you bring the emotion into these drawings, and like through not the emotion only, but the motion. It's just really, really cool. It's incredible.
Thank you very much. I enjoy making them, so I'm glad you appreciate them.